Okay. Hi, hello, and welcome to our the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program's 9th ECHO session. New Mexico Family Advocacy Program is a model of parent representation being implemented in the 13th and 2nd judicial districts that utilizes interdisciplinary teams of lawyers, social workers, and parent mentors working effectively together to provide quality representation and the advocacy and support families need for reunification or other preferred outcomes in the child welfare system. As participants in our community of practice, you'll receive professional development from experts and early adopters of the NMFAP model, learn best practices, and collaborate to solve issues that present challenges to providing quality parent representation in the court system. So welcome. If you would please, as you join us, enter your email address and your role in the chat. And so today with us here at the Hub, we have...
Hello everybody, I'm Jennifer Vieira. I work for the AOC. I'm here to provide technical assistance today. Just to remind you also to press *6 if you want to talk or mute yourself during this session. And also if there's anybody there with you other than yourself on camera, please make sure to type in, again, whoever's, their name and their role into the chat. Thank you.
Thanks. Also with us this morning, we have our parent mentor,
Quiva Hubbard.
I'm Leslie Jones. I'm one of the lead attorneys for the program. And actually the other person here at our Hub and Regular is also today's presenter. Our presentation today, I'm going to go back. A reminder to please complete the post-feedback reflection form. It's good. It will be entered in the chat so that you have the link. Our funding for our professional learning through NMFAP ECHO comes from a federal grant. So the surveys are really important to the program's broader evaluation and to continue funding. Also would ask that any of you please consider signing up to do a case presentation. We're not going to have one today, but we really would like to have case presentations from our participants. So please consider submitting a case presentation. There is a form. There's a link to the form in the invitations that you receive, and you can complete that and send it in. So today's session is clinical case management, the social worker role in an interdisciplinary team. It is presented by Caitlin DeFiore, licensed master social worker. She's a lead social worker with the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program. For the past 4 years, she's worked as a licensed master's level social worker, providing intensive clinical case management to parents. As a social worker in the program, she works with parents to address the causes and conditions that brought the children into custody, with the goal of reunifying the family as part of an interdisciplinary team with the parent's attorney and a parent mentor. Caitlin is currently dedicated to the expansion of the program by continuing to build working relationships with treatment providers, CYFD, and court systems throughout the state. So I'll turn it over to Caitlin.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. So we're going to get started with, I got to share the screen. That helps. Let me share this with you guys. So you can see it. Okay. So today we're going to start with what is clinical case management. So a lot of people know what traditional case management is in the social work world, where it's a social worker who sees clients in office and gives them referrals to services. So it could be housing, it could be information on how to apply for Medicaid, it could be finding providers for mental health treatment, but that work has traditionally been done in an office setting where clients come to you. So the difference in clinical case management is that it's a modality of mental health practice that integrates mental health treatment along with the traditional case management role as a system for coordinating services. So kind of what that means is that you're having therapeutic conversations with people while doing tangible tasks. So our program does it a little bit differently than any other program I've really experienced, in that we provide the clinical case management in people's homes in the community, basically wherever they need the assistance. So kind of how I describe an example of clinical case management would be that, let's say that we have a client who has the potential to have a job next Friday, that they've gotten hired, but they don't have a social security card. And so we're going to the social security office to get the social security card for the client, because that helps alleviate some of the stress in the client's life working, which is adding to his stress and lack of sobriety. So on the way to the social security office, we're talking about, okay, so tell me about how did the weekend go? What did you guys do? And he's like, well, I messed up and I used, and we got into a giant argument. And so we're kind of processing through that. And okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that. How are you feeling about that? What are some steps we can take? What does the relapse prevention plan look like that we've probably already created with that client? Do we need to go see your therapist today? Do we need to go to a meeting? Things like that. But it's all while we're doing this task of getting the social security card, so that the parent can start working next Friday, so that some of that stress is alleviated and they are doing something positive. Okay. So the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program, like I said, provides clinical case management services in the community for parents. We do basically anything and everything to help move the case forward, or the parent forward, because sometimes parents aren't in a place where they're going to be reunified, or they don't want to be reunified. So we're really looking to how do we help leave the parent in a better place than when we got them. So some of the things that we do with parents in our program are reinforce what clients' learning and services. So we may be working with a parent who is going to parenting, because all parents basically have to go to parenting when their kids are in custody. And we are talking about, okay, so tell me what you're talking about in parenting. And they might be talking about the different types of parenting styles there are. That is what they learned about this week. So maybe a parent says, well, I learned that I'm kind of like an authoritarian parent. And so we're talking about, okay, what does that mean and what does that look like? And what does that look like for your kids when you're parenting that way? And reinforcing some of the things that they're learning as services. So talking about like relapse prevention plans that they have with their therapist, things like that. We also review evaluations and service documentation from providers. So it could be anything from progress notes from a therapist to psychological or neuropsychological evaluations that are done as part of the case. An example would be that we have had a case in the past where a parent was diagnosed with a personality disorder, but in the body of the evaluation, it says that the MMPI, which is the personality index, was done, but it was inconclusive. But the person still diagnosed them with a personality disorder. So we're having conversations with the attorney about, look, I'm not seeing these same things, and actually this testing that they did shows that there isn't a personality disorder. And so we're talking about like kind of how to mitigate that, because personality disorders are hard to overcome, and parents can oftentimes get stuck because CYFD is like, well, see, you can't have your kid. And so we're having conversations about how do we mitigate this report that says that they have this personality disorder. We do a lot of role playing with clients before CYFD meetings, before home visits with CYFD. And sometimes it involves like how to talk to your therapist, because some clients have never been to therapy before and that can be intimidating for them. We role play like how to interact with the department when they're making you mad or upset, so that you're not being emotionally reactive in meetings or in court. We work with clients a lot to help manage behaviors in court and meetings. CYFD meetings in court can be very stressful for parents, and it's one of the hardest things that they can participate in. And so how do you manage that anxiety when it's happening so that it doesn't present in a way where people think negatively of it during court? So it could be writing notes to the social worker during court so that they're not screaming things in the courtroom. It could be using a fidget toy. It could be using the grounding techniques that they learned in therapy that they've said really help them. It can be pretty much anything and everything. Something else that we do is provide psychoeducation to family members on cases. We usually have always had conversations with the attorney and providers when we're doing that. An example of it would be when we're working with a family who maybe wants to relinquish because the case isn't going well, but their family members, the parents' family members, are telling them, if you loved your kid, you wouldn't relinquish. You would fight for them. And the parent may be feeling and has expressed to us that, well, you know, maybe I want to relinquish, but I don't know how to do that because my family is telling me that I'm going to be this terrible person if I do that. So we're doing some psychoeducation with the family members in that, the parents' family members, on why relinquishment could be a positive thing for that kid and that family. We work with clients to engage more effectively with their attorneys in CYFD. So sometimes clients feel like attorneys are kind of just like there for the court hearings and then they can't interact with them outside of that. So we work a lot on how to engage with your attorney, how to engage with your attorney if they're not responding to you, how to engage with the department in a positive way that is not screaming or cussing them out or telling them why they're not doing their jobs, and really work to build those relationships so that we can move forward in the case. Because what we found is that when parents are working more effectively with CYFD and with their attorney, the case moves faster because everyone is on, even if we're not on the same page about everything, everybody's able to communicate about what is happening in the case effectively. We, as social workers in the program, engage with the department to work towards more individualized treatment plans, making sure the parents' needs are met, finding appropriate providers, really anything and everything that helps move the case forward. We provide current and relevant clinical information to the attorneys. So it could be that I'm working with a client, I'm going to use Leslie as an example. So I'm working with a client with Leslie, and Leslie is maybe a little bit forceful in how she's talking to that client and cuts the client off when she's talking or something like that, and thinks like she's trying to move it along, but really that's just agitating the client. And every time we meet, the client's just getting escalated and screaming, and we're not able to be productive in that. So it could be Leslie and I having a conversation about, hey, Leslie, you know, I've worked with this client for a little bit. We've had this, the client and I have had this conversation about how to more effectively engage with each other. And this is what the client is saying that they need to do that, and working through that. Providing clinical information could also be, you know, I know that this parent's treatment plan says that they just need to go to individual therapy at an agency, but really this parent has a personality disorder, and the evidence-based treatment for that is dialectical behavioral therapy. And so I think we need to find a provider who provides that versus just any agency that can provide them individual therapy. Another example of it could be before hearings and like TPRs or adjudications, providing relevant assessments of things that are happening with the client to the attorney, and providing research to the attorney about, hey, this is the research I found on why this client needs this modality of treatment, even though the department's saying, yeah, we're not gonna refer them to an agency that does that. And then we provide the typical case management services of helping clients access resources, whether that's housing, TANF, Medicaid, how to use medical transportation, things like that. So why is this relevant to attorneys? What is different about this practice? So the difference in this practice as an attorney, my belief is, as a social worker, I should say, is that we're able to provide that clinical information to you guys that helps move the case forward or helps in hearings and trials. I think we do things outside of this list of things is not all that we do, but it's just like a brief synopsis of what it looks like. clinical case management is different than regular case management, like we talked about already. Not a lot of agencies do it, and we've been very fortunate that we've been able to implement it as part of this program. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? So I had a couple of thoughts as you were talking, Kaylin, about going down this list. One of them was when you talked about role playing with clients, that one of the things that I have found has been that the social workers have been able to do that's incredibly helpful is what we just sort of take for granted, that we know how, even just how to schedule an appointment, how to access whatever, how to get our cell phone activated, how just really sometimes really basic things that either because they haven't had the opportunity to do them on their own, because for economic reasons or for social reasons. I mean, sometimes we have really young clients whose they've been living with their parents, and their parents have pretty much taken care of everything. And so now they're being asked to kind of step up and be the adults so that they can parent their own kids, and they have to learn how to do all this stuff. And I've found that really helpful. I mean, just, and even like reminding them to leave messages. Every time you call, leave a message. I can't tell you how many clients but I did call you, but you didn't leave me a message. So how am I supposed to know that you called me? Or the social worker, they tell the social worker I called. And so helping them role play. How do you leave a message that will get you the response that you need, right? So things like that I've found really, really helpful.
I think something else that I forgot to point out earlier is that while we're having therapeutic conversations with parents, we are not providing individual therapy to parents. It is more reinforcing what they're learning in their services and having therapeutic conversations during crisis management situations where they need some immediate services that we can provide to them, but that maybe they can't see their therapist right then. So we are not an individual therapy provider for clients in these cases.
Another thing that you do that I've found incredibly helpful is crisis intervention, right? You talk about that, about how, and frankly, how the crisis intervention that you do as an NMFAP social worker is different than what like another clinician might do for crisis intervention because of the legal case.
I think, so even just as far as clinicians and therapy practices, the major difference is that we go to where the client is when there's a crisis. So if the client's at home having a crisis, having some suicidal thoughts, we go over there and have a conversation with them about kind of what's going on, what are some steps that we can take, are there steps that they don't want to take, and kind of doing a suicide assessment in that moment, but in the client's environment where it's not a, you have to be at the hospital to do that, or you have to come to my office to see me to do that. And then if that client says, you know, I think I need to be evaluated, we have gone and sat for hours and hours and hours with them at CaseMen or other facilities to kind of be a support to them while they're in that crisis.
What about crises that are really around something significant in their treatment plan that they're having a crisis around? Like, I mean, usually I think of relapse, but there can be other stuff like part of their treatment plan might be that they cannot have contact with a partner with whom they've had, you know, domestic violence or whatever. But when there's a crisis around that kind of thing,
I would say it's kind of the same. We would go out and assess what's going on and come up with a plan with the parent on how to address whatever's happening in that moment. And it could be that we're going to an NA meeting with them if that's what they feel that they need to address a relapse, or going to MATS with them if they want to go to detox, different things like that.
What about the impact that it could have for them on their CYFD case? And how do you work with them around that and the department?
So I think in that moment is a little bit different than the aftermath. So in that moment, we're working on immediate safety and immediate needs. So that would be like accessing services. Then a day or two later, maybe we're talking about, okay, so let's talk to your attorney about kind of what happened and how we're going to move forward with it. And it could be a situation where we decide we're going to have a conversation with CYFD about a relapse. And so how do we do that in a way that the parent doesn't feel shamed or guilted or like they have to tell the department, and really be empowered to do that on their own? And it could mean that we're role playing. How do you tell your worker that you relapsed?
No, I have some other stuff. Does anybody else, any of our participants have any questions? Those of you that don't have your cameras on, if you do have a question or that you'd like to ask, if you could please make sure you turn on your camera. And you can also put questions in the chat and we can ask them as well from the chat. But does anybody else have any questions that they wanted to ask Caitlin about this? So Caitlin, let's see. So how do you feel like so like a regular clinician, a therapist who's doing, you know, a licensed master's level social worker who's doing individual therapy with somebody, they have to like report to the insurer or whatever, right? But just basic stuff. But they don't have to communicate with a team like you do as part of this. So talk about that a little bit. What does that mean to be communicating as part of the team with the parent mentor, with the attorney, and how that's different too? I mean, obviously.
Okay. So I think the biggest thing from the client standpoint is understanding that we are going to communicate as a team about these things. So oftentimes when we get cases at the beginning, we have conversations with parents about, okay, I want to explain to you kind of how the program works and how communication works within our program. So we explain that we have attorney-client privilege and that what that means for them in their case, and that we would still need to report any immediate harm situations for children, but that we would have a conversation with them about it and with the attorney about it when that's happening. And then kind of how we describe communication to parents is that it's like a square. So you have the parent, the social worker, the parent mentor, and the attorney in this square, right? And so we communicate freely within that square. So everybody knows the information that's going on in the case within that square, because the attorney needs to know to be able to effectively represent their client in court. The social worker needs to know so that they can provide the appropriate resources for support to the client. And the parent mentor needs to know so that the parent mentor is able to support the client the best way that they're able to. And the parent needs to know because it's their case and it's their life. So then as a team, the four of us in that square decide what information gets shared outside of that with the department. And then, so I think that's different from how most therapists interact with their clients, in that for the most part, what you tell your therapist stays in that room outside of that therapist getting supervision, and providing like update reports to the department, which it's not going to be like this person told me X, Y, and Z, right. But it's like we continue to work on whatever you're working on with the client. I think it's also different in making sure that we have regular communication with the attorneys, because we all get very busy, and really making sure that we are working together as a team on this case. This is kind of a new type of social work. Most people are used to like talking about interdisciplinary practice in like medical settings and other settings like that, where there's a different skill set, a different type of interaction with the client than what we do. The other really great thing about our program is because we're not billing insurance for it, we can spend as much time with the clients as we need to. We're not constricted to the 45-minute sessions that exist in therapy.
So I had a couple of thoughts while you're talking about that. How have you managed clients, or I assume you've had them, Have that you've had clients who've told you something and said, but I don't want you to tell my attorney? And
so in that moment we work on, okay, so tell me a little bit why you don't want your attorney to know about this. And so we're having a conversation about that and about how we get to a point where you can tell your attorney that, or I can tell your attorney that. And we're working on that about, okay, so your attorney can't represent you if they don't know X, Y, and Z of what's happening with your case. And that doesn't help you get your kids back if that's the goal. So, or even if it's not the goal, it doesn't help your case in any way for your attorney not to have this information, or for the parent mentor not to have this information. Because we've definitely had instances where even parents have tried to triangulate between attorneys and social workers and don't want things communicated in between them. And I think we've made sure that parents understand that we need to communicate as a team to make this work. And it's just, how do we get the parent to a point where they're accepting that?
Right. I would think, though, that one of the barriers or one of the things that you would come up against is, at least in my experience, so many of the parents, they don't trust because, I mean, they've had their kids taken away. They've had a social worker who, on the one hand, tells them, I'm here to help you, but on the other hand, has been part of removal of their kids and part of documenting whether they are or aren't going to get them back. And so I just wonder about that, about, you know, sort of negotiating or managing that fear that, you know, the attorney really isn't on their side. They're, you know, working for the department, or, you know, they're just, or does that make you just like the department social worker? Like, you know, that trust issue, I would think is really huge.
Yeah. And I think the biggest way to kind of mitigate that is to have conversations with parents when you start working with them about the differences between what your job is and the department's job, and that we don't work for the department. And we even still, I mean, sometimes have situations where clients are like, well, you guys are just trying to take my kids away. Right. And we're very honest with parents and have conversations about, well, this isn't a you guys situation, but let's talk about why you're feeling like me as the social worker doesn't want you to have your kids back. Let's have a conversation about that. And we're able to be open and honest with the parents and talk to them about why they're feeling that way.
What about, have you had situations in interdisciplinary practice where there's been disagreement within the team about the best course of action for the client? Or where, you know, you've had a client who's really pushing for something, but your clinical assessment of the client is that's not what would be best for them.
Yeah.
So how have you managed those kinds of conflicts within the team?
So I'm going to say there's two different answers to that, because how I'm going to manage that with an attorney is a little bit different. Right. So with a parent, when we've had parents, or when I've had parents that feel like they want to go to this therapist who we've talked about is not the best type of treatment for their diagnosis, we're very open and candid with parents about our assessments of that and why that's necessary. So it could be that we're reviewing the neuropsych with parents and discussing the diagnosis they were given, and then looking at the diagnosis in the DSM and what those traits are, and then talking about what the evidence base for this therapy is. There have been times where we've had parents that are educated and know their rights a little bit more than some of the other parents that we have. And so there have even been times where we've had to provide parents with research on why this modality of treatment is better for this particular diagnosis. I think the difference in conflicts with attorneys is that we're able to talk about it in more of a clinical situation. So giving clinical opinions and providing the research to attorneys, whereas some parents that we work with aren't able to receive that. And so we have to adjust how we provide that information to them.
But what if a client, say, I mean, I don't know if you've had this kind of situation, but say you have a client that is facing a change of permanency plan, right? And the client is adamant that they want to have a contested hearing they want to contest the change of plan. They want the attorney to just, go flat out, whatever. But you have, and or maybe the parent mentor as well, have information about the client that, and you may have even already talked with them about it, that you feel like if we do this, if we go to that hearing and contest, is not going to go well for them. So what about things like that?
So I think that's something that we continue to have conversations with clients about. If we've already had that conversation, we continue to talk about it. But really, at the end of the day, clients have a right to self-determination. And if they're saying, no, I still want to contest this, I believe that this is in my best interest, then we figure out how do we do that in a way that supports the client,
right,
in their self-determination.
Yeah. Okay, because from the attorney standpoint, it's client directed. I may totally disagree and can tell the client, I think that this is really a bad idea, but ultimately it's their call whether to go forward with the hearing. So
can I say something to that?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen the social worker do when it comes to the client want to proceed with a situation that the lawyer tells them that they feel that it's not best, the social worker will give them the pros and cons of it and also talk them through it as far as, if this happens, how do you want to handle this? Am I able to touch you to calm you down? Or what steps do we need in order to get you back grounded?
Yeah. Okay, so we have something on the chat. So from Delaney Davis, Delaney, do you want to unmute and ask the question? Delaney? Yeah. Oh. Okay, now I think you're unmuted. So you have a question. I see through the chat. I'm still not hearing you. I don't know why. Okay, so
Okay.
Not working. Okay, she's asking, is there currently a wait in order for clients to receive services through NMFAP? How early will NMFAP start engaging with clients in the process? So unfortunately,
right now there is not a waiting list. We've had one in the past. Currently what we're waiting for is the implementation plan to be approved by the feds. So we cannot move forward with taking clients at this point in time until the feds give us the okay. So kind of what that's going to look like in the future is that we'll take cases when they're filed and an attorney is assigned through random assignment. So it'll be the only criteria we're going to have going forward is that it's an attorney who works with our program, because not all the attorneys will. And then if it's an attorney who works for our program and they have a custodial parent on that case, where the children were removed from them, then we'll use a random number generator to assign the case to a social worker when there's openings.
Right. So the bottom line is that during the federal grant period, there will not be a referral process. You can't refer a parent to the program. It has to be done by this random case assignment so that they can get good data to determine how well the program is working. So because of that, unfortunately, it's not going to be a choice. If the case comes in and meets the criteria, then it may randomly be assigned to the program or not. But it'll be right at the beginning of the case.
And I want to talk about, so the second part to your question was how early can an MFAP start engaging with clients? So what we found over the years is that the sooner we get a case, the better the outcomes we have. So ideally we would take cases at custody and be able to start working with parents then. And we have another question from Shasta, and will that be randomly distributed between counties also? Shasta, are you asking, will the caseloads be randomly distributed?
Right.
So,
or how else how are you guys going to determine how many cases go to Bernalillo versus Sandoval versus Valencia and that sort of thing.
So kind of how we're gonna work on that, because obviously Bernalillo has the largest number of cases and we can't just base everything on that, is that there will be social workers that are only working in Bernalillo County. And then there'll be social workers who are working both in Valencia County and in Bernalillo, or in Sandoval and in Bernalillo. So it'll be a percentage of the cases that they have will be in Valencia County versus Bernalillo County, or Sandoval County versus Bernalillo County.
Right. So the number of cases in each county, the number of cases assigned to NMFAP will be a percentage of the total filed. So obviously, since Bernalillo County filed way more cases than, say, Sandoval County, right? But it'll still be like the same, approximately the same percentage. Of course, once the social workers have a full caseload, right? Because we're still going to have a limited number of social workers in the program. And once, if we reach the point where they all have a full caseload, then there won't be any cases assigned until one of them has another opening. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Any other observations? Because I know that we have some other program social workers. If you have thoughts, observations that you want to share also with the group. No? Okay. All right. Well, I guess if we have,
We're done a little bit early
we're
today.
done early today. So I would ask that you please, again, a reminder to fill out the post-session evaluation feedback and reflection form, and that's in your chat. The link is there in your chat. Again, please consider doing a case presentation. There will be no echo session on August 6th. So we have these every other Tuesday. There will not be a session on August 6th. It's right before the core training, and a lot of people are going to be involved in that on the 7th, 8th, and 9th. So our next session will be on August 20th, and the topic will be the Cornerstone Model, Legal Advocacy for Achieving Cornerstone Principles. So please put that on your calendar. You will get a reminder. And if you are enjoying these sessions, we encourage you to let your colleagues know and that they're welcome to join us as well.
Leslie, I have one last question about the survey.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've remembered to take the survey, but it does not seem that there's an option for those of us who are in all three roles.
Is that right? So we need to take a look at that. You mean for youth attorney, guardian ad litem, and respondent attorney? Right. Okay. 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 Thank you. We'll fix it. Okay. Is there anything else? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much. And thank you, Caitlin.
Thanks, everyone.
Today. Okay. We can stop the meeting. Stop share.
Oh, I forgot that.
Oh.